Hey, hello everyone. This is the very first episode after the very big 2 year pause for the brand architect. I just think that today is the right time to revisit everything that is happening to your life, look at what could be done differently, and I just realized that I really missed the experience, and I really missed having my own personal podcast. I'm restarting the whole thing. Brand Architect is back, and my first guest of the relaunched show is Chris Walker. The way I'm picking the guests, by the way, I'm not looking for influencers. I'm looking for experts, right? I'm looking for people who actually know their stuff. And I think that's more valuable to the audience, and you get more knowledge like that, and you talk to real people versus people who just pretend to be someone else. So I'm really happy to have you over. Thanks for agreeing to come over, Chris. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Super happy to chat about whatever we're going to cover today.
So I noticed you. I guess many of us have been this shift and transformation to using LinkedIn more often these days than before. A few years ago, if people would say that LinkedIn would be my preferred platform at the moment, I would probably laugh because it was very improbable. But things changed a lot, and I noticed you, and we got connected on LinkedIn. And the way I'm noticing people is by the way they put content out there, and what they do, and how much engagement are they getting, and how genuine they are. So you were one of the people who were consistently putting out good quality stuff out there, and was not kind of getting into this drop a comment here, let's do this, let's do that, let's be part of the pods and everything else. So that's how I discovered you. But I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sounds good. Fantastic. Yeah. If someone told me 24 months ago that LinkedIn would be the primary platform that I use, and I barely log into Instagram or Facebook or other channels that I used a lot more before, I'd be very surprised. And now here we are. So my name's Chris Walker. I am a marketing practitioner. I've worked with a lot of venture-backed growth stage, rapidly growing companies that have raised money or trying to grow faster. I did that as an employee, leading brand, demand gen, and overall marketing with several different companies over the past 5 years of my career. And then about 12 months ago, I saw an opening where the model that I had run at 2 companies in a row was having a lot of success. And I looked out in the world and I said, wow, look, like every SaaS company could use this. They're running demand gen in a very traditional way. Let's do SEO and conferences and webinars where we do top of funnel information, and a bunch of people sign up, and then our SDRs call them and nobody converts. And let's run conversion-based social media ads and get a bunch of leads for $10 and nobody closes the revenue. And let's not produce audience-focused content. And all of these different things that I continued to see, and I have developed a different way to do things that I think is more buyer focused, more effective, overall, just a better go-to-market strategy. And so now we work with about 12 companies and continue to grow that base and are seeing really good success.
Okay, yeah, interesting. So how was the transition from working for someone else versus I know that many people, probably like 9 out of 10 you talk to would like to do that, but there are so many obstacles in terms of different excuses, the real one being probably the self-doubt or the fear. So how did you feel about that? Was it an easy step to make, or?
Yeah, so I think things always feel harder until you do them.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, driving a car, swimming when you're young, riding a bike, starting your own business, it always feels harder. I do, as I reflect, think that it did feel harder. And then once you get into it and you're committed to it and you work, you learn. Like you just learn how to do it. I think one of the pieces where it was a lot easier for me is even when I worked inside of companies, I felt a lot more like a consultant than an employee.
Okay. Yeah.
I would come into companies, they would be doing things a certain way, and I would completely rethink how they did things. At the beginning of my career, how they would do manufacturing and supply chain, or what products they would develop. And then that
Mm,
started moving into how are we going to do uh, go how are we going to go to market, and then how are we going to do marketing communications, and then how are we going to do demand gen. It always I would always take a very I would work outside of what my job description was, find a
mm,
very high level business problem that I felt I was equipped to solve, and then I would go
yeah.
solve that while still doing my day job. For people that are working inside of their jobs right now, that is one huge takeaway, is that if you want to accelerate your career, you need to excel in your current role, and you need to then go find places where you can add value that make a meaningful impact to the business. And then you build skills. And then if you're successful in those, then you go and do that. You have to create your own job inside of the company you work at.
Yeah, I agree. It absolutely makes sense. So, I mean, absolutely. I'm sure that your marketing knowledge and all the other skill set that you developed kind of help you with your new venture right now. So, startups. Exposure and having people know about your existence is very important, but that's something that many people struggle with when they are just starting out, because they get overwhelmed with so many other aspects of the business that marketing kind of starts shifting towards non-priority lists, which I think is wrong. But for someone who's just starting and has a startup, what are the first steps that you think they should take into account in marketing? Like, how should they go out there while they don't yet have, customer case studies, they don't have yet a portfolio to showcase? How do you start?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that we need to figure out to guide this discussion is what type of business are we talking about? Are we talking about a startup that has no money and one employee and sells a service like the company that I started 12 months ago? Or are we talking about a venture backed company that is starting up, that just raised a couple $1 million and is trying to figure out how to spend them, and they sell a product? Are we product service? And then where does that company sit? And then I can answer with a little bit more context.
Okay, let's follow your example. I think
Okay.
it's like a real life example, and very time wise quite close to today. So let's follow your journey.
Okay, sure. So I think it's at its most super basic level. If you're trying to grow a big business, I think you need to figure out what you're actually selling,
Mm-hmm.
how to justify the value of what you're selling, and make sure the most important, make sure that you're differentiated.
Yeah.
I've been able to grow really fast because I'm selling something in a different way, that is a different approach to a very targeted set of people. So it's, what are you selling? How are you differentiated? What audience are you selling to? How can you get as niche as possible? So I've started, just so you can understand my journey, I started targeting B2B companies.
Mm-hmm.
Product service didn't matter, industry didn't matter, size didn't matter, number of employees. And now, like, the ideal profile is B2B SaaS with an average contract value of $8,000 to $50,000 a year, with less than $50 million in revenue, but more than $2 million in revenue, that has at least 3 marketing employees and has a dedicated marketing leader, not a CRO. That is the ideal profile.
Okay.
It's very focused, and it's counterintuitive because a lot of people want to go after this huge market, but when you get more narrow, you do better, especially at the
Yeah.
beginning.
If you're for everyone, then you're for no one at the end of the day, right?
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like one of the journeys on a target. Now let's get back to your question. So, like, now you have your product and it delivers value and you know how to position it. Let's pretend all those things are figured out. So what are you going to do next? if you have no money, my suggestion would be to, obviously you need to go organic. And then depending on what you're selling, you need to figure out what channel is going to work the best. Most B2B companies today probably would have the most success on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Because of the organic reach, the attention, all these different dynamics that may not be around, that may not have been existed 12 months before us, and may not be at the same place in 12 months from now. But right now, it's probably the best place to go. And then what are you going to do? My thought would be to create content the way that I did it, and the way that I would recommend doing it at the beginning is to start a podcast like what we're doing right now, video ideally, and go and call 20 people at companies in the job titles that you'd want to sell to, and interview them. Ask if they want to be on your podcast about a topic that they are an expert in, and then just put that content out. And ideally, it doesn't have to do with your product. And through that execution, you get market research, you get content organic, you build a relationship with that person. That person will share it. If the content's good, that person, they're happy about it, they'll share it with their network, which gets you exposure to all those things. There are a lot of different reasons why that is the best use of time when you have no resources. That's what I would say. And then I would do that as frequently and consistently as possible, while still maintaining the, being able to keep the lights on and run the business.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense. So the content, you said, obviously it's very nice when you're getting guests who have bigger audiences and they like the content and they share it with their audiences. Sometimes, part of it you have to do yourself, right? You have to share your own content and try to have as many eyeballs to it as possible. And then there is this hard balance between self-promotion, but at the same time, kind of, getting out there. How do you tackle? I don't know. I mean,
I don't find it to be a very hard balance. I think it's a hard balance for people that are short-term focused, that don't understand how to build a brand.
Okay.
So people, a lot of people confuse the difference between sales and marketing, and they think that they're the same.
Yeah.
But they're not.
Sure.
So most people think they're doing marketing, they're actually doing sales.
Okay, by selling themselves in this case.
I mean, putting out a post with some information and saying, "Hey, come work with my company. We'll give you a good deal." That's sales.
Yeah.
Regardless of what channel you're using, this is channel agnostic. It's intent based. Are you trying to sell someone and convert someone to a customer, or are you trying to build brand and create relationships, which then create sales later? There's a huge difference that people miss.
And the better you do the first part, probably the easier the other part comes organically as a result, right?
Yeah. I mean, both. It's clear that both ways can work. There are plenty of companies that have been super successful, 100% sales. There are plenty of companies that have been successful that are 100% brand and marketing. So both ways can work, but it's recognizing the difference, and most people don't. And so when we get back to like the example where I was like, create content and interview these people and put it out on LinkedIn, most people will revert to, let me go scrape an email list and get phone numbers and go into sales mode. That's the way that most people will approach it, whether it's somebody in their living room trying to build a consulting business, or it is a product-based company that is a startup trying to grow. They're going to go hire 10 SDRs. They're going to go full on sales mode, and they'll figure out the marketing later, or they'll just completely push it off. Or if they do marketing, it's going to be sales-driven marketing, performance marketing stuff that gives leads to sales. That's all the focus is. And so being able to recognize that difference, and if you look into the marketing category and being able to say, okay, this is my marketing, my mind share, my budget, my resource allocation, what slice of that pie is going to go to performance marketing, Google AdWords, conversion-based social, whatever, direct response email, what percentage of my time and money and resources are going to go there, and what slice of the pie is going to go to brand. And when anything that brand is not, I don't consider brand to be your logo and your colors. I consider it to be any execution where the success of the execution is not measured on direct ROI.
Yeah.
There is ROI on a lot of brand activities that's not attributable and not measured in that piece. I cannot say that the LinkedIn post I put out 43 days ago generated me this many sales. Yeah. But I can say that putting out a piece of content on LinkedIn almost every day for the past 6 months got me millions of dollars in sales. Mm-hmm. That is the difference.
Yeah.
And most people will not give brand enough time to get to that type of magnitude. They will make 7 posts on LinkedIn, say, I didn't get any leads, I got 10 likes, this isn't worth it, and just go back to doing the same dumb shit they were doing before.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone is very often looking for a magic button and a quick fix, and in order to get sustainable results, it's very hard, to convince people that it's about consistent efforts. There is no shortcut, there is no magic button. People who are selling you courses about making millions just by spending 15 minutes online is not really the case, etc., etc. So, right, mm-hmm. It's just not working that way.
And there's a lot of services that position themselves as magic bullets, which they're not. I lose a lot of business because I tell people the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I go in and say, you're probably not going to see an impact for 3 months because we have a process. We know that it works, but we're going to do things the right way. And the right way is not running a bunch of ads to get you leads that aren't going to close. And so if you want 100 leads and get to in $0 in revenue, go find someone else to work with, because there's people that can do that for you. There's people that can send spam LinkedIn messages and destroy your brand over time and get you some sales conversations and no sales. If you want that, go somewhere else. And so I will lose revenue in the short term, but by being upfront about that, I just remove people that aren't going to be good to work with anyway.
Yeah.
And I focus on the people that believe in the process, are in it, and we have a lot of successful relationships that way. So it's by taking a long-term view that, yes, we'll lose clients in the short term, but we'll only work with clients that are set up for success. And when we get through 1 or 2 cycles of 10 clients having really good results, that's where you create word of mouth brand that injects a lot of future growth.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a long-term, I mean, it's worth the investment, and it's a long-term thing, but you'll see it later, and it will be a way better ROI versus just the short-term.
And it plays into product-based businesses too.
Yeah.
It plays into product-based businesses too that are too short-term focused, that jam in people that are not good fits for the product. They're going to churn after 3 months. And then what happens when people don't recognize they look at it very directly. Okay, we got the revenue and then they churned. What they don't see is, okay, we had those 100 customers, they churned within 6 months. And then what do they say when people ask them about the product?
Yeah.
And they completely forget about the fact that the word of mouth of what other people say is by far the most impactful thing in the world. I don't care what marketing or sales tactics or whatever you're doing. It's what people say about you. When I call somebody else and say, hey, I was looking at this software product, what do you think? And somebody else tells me, well, it was $100,000 a year. We got rid of it because it wasn't worth it and it didn't work and the implementation was too long and there was no support, blah, blah, blah. That's what drives businesses forward. When you call somebody and say, yeah, it's the best product I've ever used, you should buy it. And then you get a ton of new business, organic, no paid ad spend. You're going to attribute it to the SEO work you're doing or something dumb when actually something different happened. We can get into I've done enough on the attribution conversation. I'm not sure that there's much to be had there, but it's about having a lot of empathy and understanding for how buying processes happen in a lot of ways that you can't measure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the bombarding messages on LinkedIn and kind of cold selling or cold kind of, connecting. That is something that has annoyed me a lot, especially when the first thing you hear from the person is a pitch, right? Is there a way, I mean, I had these arguments with different people about, if it is at all possible to personalize those messages, because even the personalized messages, you kind of feel that they were, you already know what the purpose is, and that the person is not really interested into connecting or building a relationship. They are just hitting you up because they want to sell to you. So the second, if not the first message is about the pitch, the second one will be coming as a pitch if you reply, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how is it at all worth it to think about personalization and spending so much time about figuring out how to shape the message, or the whole fact of it approaching it, the whole thing that way is the wrong way to look at it?
So the way that I've been thinking about this question recently is not about whether or not it works. It's about whether or not it works better than other alternatives. And so every company has a limited set of resources, has a limited set of things that they can do. And so with that set of resources, what things are you going to do to drive your brand, your revenue, and your long-term, growth and sustainability of the company? And in my view, you pay a external source, I don't know, somewhere probably between $3,000 and $10,000 a month to do that for you, or you pay an SDR or multiple SDRs $5,000 to $7,000 a month to do it inside of your company. And my belief is that that allocation of dollars would be better spent to drive a company forward in another way. And so, and then if you go down that path, regardless of the magnitude, right? So if the magnitude's 100 SDRs or one, it's a bucket of money relative to the total bucket of money that you have. And what are you going to do with it? And so my feeling is find the one or two or three things, especially when you're small, find the one or two or three things that are working the best, and then do the most of them. Very few companies take that approach. Integrated marketing. Let's be everywhere. Let's make sure we spend $100,000 in that trade show booth, and let's make sure we buy, the billboards, and let's make sure we have our logo on a trash can at the airport, and let's make sure we have a ton of banner ads running, retargeting people that nobody sees, and let's do all these different things. And actually, we don't really know which ones are working or not, but like, we're everywhere is the thing. And wouldn't it be better to know which one is working the best and then move most of the money to that one and do it better? And so that's kind of the way that I look at things, right? Like my company right now, we do no outbound selling, no cold, since we started the company, haven't made a single cold call, haven't sent a single cold email, haven't sent a single cold LinkedIn DM. Everything comes inbound. So we don't do that. I could have hired somebody 1099 or whatever at the beginning to do that and paid them straight commission, whatever. That's not what I wanted to do. The next thing, we don't go to a lot of companies that are in my space would go to a bunch of trade shows. They would spend $10,000 to be at the inbound conference or these little field marketing conferences for less money or whatever. We don't do that. We don't run banner ads. We don't buy Google AdWords, which a lot of people that do my thing would do, because we take all of that money and energy and effort and go hard on LinkedIn and owned media properties and email. And so I think a lot of people could find more success if they audited all the things that they're doing and really figured out what's working the best, and not what the CRM or the marketing automation platform tells you what's working the best, because it's wrong. It doesn't actually tell you unless you're running direct response. Google AdWords is probably the only one where you're going to get clear attribution. Even then, it's messy. When you truly, and I was reading a book on this last night, and it finally made sense to me, is that if you have this big marketing mix, and you know what you're doing, you can feel it. Like when I was getting 5 likes on my LinkedIn posts, I knew that was the best place to spend my time. Other people don't see it that way.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. So these days, I mean, the question that I'm getting very, very often these days is, I mean, we are all stuck at home right now. There are huge shifts in everything, like everyday life, on personal level, And also at the same time on a professional level, loads of anxiety, uncertainty. We don't know how our businesses are going to progress in the future, how things are going to change, because once all this is gone, nothing is going to be exactly the same, right? So at this period, some people decide to take a pause and just wait and stop all their marketing activities altogether. Some others did something that is probably even worse, continued whatever was planned as if nothing happened, and just, putting out stuff that is no longer relevant or no longer kind of, within the environment. So it looks very awkward and kind of a bit, unsensitive even. So what's the right approach? Like what to do right now when everything for at least few months is going to be like this, probably?
The short answer is adjust. I think that people that are not looking at what was happening, what they were planning to do 60 days ago, and then what's happening right now and not making adjustments, it's just, frankly, I think it's irresponsible to not have that, at least that discussion or thought process in your own head of how has this changed? How do I need to adjust? People have been, the way that I see it is that this really unfortunate situation is just going to force people to start doing more of the right things, in my view. In terms of how I see it, could be right or wrong, but in my view, it's going to force people to need to do things differently from a marketing perspective, and will force them to make choices about what is actually working and what's not, and have a hard look at what else they could be doing that they probably should have been doing 5 years ago that they've ignored because the good economy hid inefficiencies in the business where they could probably spend $1 million in marketing over here, and it might not have worked because there was enough need and buying going on that it looked like the marketing was working when it wasn't. I think a lot of companies will run into that situation. Companies over the past 5 years that were growing at 20 or 30% were growing at the rate of the economy. They were not growing at the rate that they should have been.
Yeah.
And so when the economy slows down, those companies will not continue to grow at that rate. The companies that were growing at 20 or 30 should have been growing at 60 to 100 if they were doing the right things. And so I don't know if that really answered your question. If you want to have a follow-up, happy to do that. But I think that they're forced to not go to events. They're forced to not do events. I think there's goods and bads in that. I think that the goods are, I think a lot of companies that we're going to have the $1 million user conference or spend the $200,000 on the trade show that got canceled. Let's look at both those. Let's look at both those scenarios. The $1 million user conference that companies are now moving online and doing for free.
Yeah.
They're going to have 10 to 50x more attendees because it's not in a specific location. It doesn't cost money. So they're going to have way more attendance. Yeah. The goal of having that conference is content consumption and brand awareness. This gives them a better opportunity to accomplish that goal. But they never thought about it this way until they were forced to. I think a lot of companies will ditch the in-person user conference over time after they see how well this one can work if executed properly. The $200,000 trade show booth that they didn't buy this year because the conference didn't happen or it was postponed, and then they look back 6 months later, and if they tried to measure, they see no negative impact to not having that spend, or they get forced to have to think about a better way to use that $200,000. And if they know how to use it in the right way, they'll find that the ROI, even though they get some sales from the trade show, there's a better way to use those money to grow faster and more efficiently long term. And so I think those are some good things. On the event side, some people that are doing things well, and one of the things that was working best for my business was having micro events, like almost the anti-trade show in my view. Companies, instead of spending $200,000 on a trade show booth, should be having 10 $20,000 micro events.
Yeah.
Where the main output, the event is great, you get 50 people there, but the main output is that 90 minutes of content created at the event. And so it's actually becomes half event, but mainly a content engine. And where you actually get the ROI is on the amplification of that video over time. We did 2 of them. We did one in January and one in February. Saw really, really strong results on it. It's really unfortunate that we're not able to continue that mission, because I think that was, I think that if that had enough time to play out, which is probably 6 months, I would have had enough data and knowledge to go and show the $50 million company how to really change their business by doing 2 of those a month in a bunch of different major cities. That we'll get back to that. My company will, and continuing to pursue that, because there's the approach and overall mission of trade shows has not changed in 3 decades.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find ways to give companies the best alternatives to the ways that they legacy spend money. And the best way that I figured out how to do that, and it's funny how I got here, because I was telling companies to do this 6 months ago and nobody did it. Do this event. You should really start a video podcast. You should really have your CEO be producing content on LinkedIn, and nobody did it. And so what did I start to do? I started to do it myself, so that I show them what it looks like. I know how much it works. I know how to do it. I know how to measure it. I know what to look for. And almost zero consultants would take that approach. I'm not an SEO agency. I'm a business growth consultant. So it's agnostic. If trade shows are the best place to grow, then let's go do those.
Yeah.
My experience though is that they're really not. And so anyway, I just that little rant, I hope gives some context to people about the some of the positives in this unfortunate situation, which is that you're going to have probably a lot of flexibility to figure out better ways to do marketing.
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, I think this situation put everyone in a position where they're outside their comfort zone. And things that they, and now they are forced to do the things that they were afraid to try out, right? So eventually more and more people will start trying out more things in order to be more creative and finding out alternatives to the things that they couldn't do. And I agree. I mean, for many people, LinkedIn would work. Video content will work. Many people will probably think about. I think just the mindset that now is the time to figure out new things. I'm sure eventually will bring some new alternatives in place, because people will be experimenting because of the situation. And probably, now it's the video, we will have more alternatives in the future, because people will be trying out some new things in order to differentiate. Because as soon as everyone floods into just the videos the way we did it before, or some new people are doing it now and it works, and they copy the same approach, then the ones who started it earlier would probably look for something else on top of it, or something differently, and then it will evolve. So I think the speed of the development of different new marketing tactics will be much faster than it was before, just because it forces more people to start experimenting. I don't know what's wrong with I was one of the people a few years ago who absolutely hated videos and who was like telling I will never get on video. I don't know what is it there about videos, but very often when you advise that to someone, the first reaction is like, no, this is not for me. But probably the more people get into it, the more they see that it's not scary. It doesn't really matter how you look. I get this term saying face for radio. I mean, these days, it doesn't really matter, right? These days, everyone is on a video. And very often, the feedback I'm getting is very often they don't even watch the video. they listen to it on the background,
Totally.
right? Because they care about the content rather than, how you look or what you wear, or whether you have a fancy green screen with all these special effects behind you, or you're just sitting on your sofa. So I think that's another thing that people will start realizing, that it's not really about the tech. It's not about the fancy stuff and how professional it looks. It's more about your message and how you deliver it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I was thinking as you went through that is it actually doesn't matter to me how many people are doing something. It matters how good you are at it. There's a lot of people that play basketball, not a lot of people make it to the NBA.
Yeah.
The reason being, like, as more people flood in and create content, I think it will just further expose who is good and who's not.
Yeah.
The attention will go up. The people that are bad will get more likes just because there's more people on the platform. But there will be a clear separation between who can do it well, uniquely, originally, consistently, in the best way. And so there's a lot of runway on LinkedIn, regardless of how many people start creating content. The reach will decline, but the reach now is just declining on Instagram, has way faster user growth than LinkedIn, and the platform's been going for 7 years. There's a lot of runway here that I'm not all that concerned about. A lot of people run Google ads. Some people have more success at it than others. The execution, in my mind, the actual tactic that you're doing, a lot of people are like, yeah, we do social, which means that they post a picture of their company picnic once a month on Facebook and think that that's doing social.
Yeah.
I think about it very differently. And so, it's, to me, it's really not that much about how many people of your competitors are doing it. It's about what works the best right now and how good are you at it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, you mentioned the picnic picture around like a corporate, I presume you meant a corporate social media account, right? So many B2B businesses, like your target audience, are a bit a bit worried in terms of content creation, because they think it should be very formal. It should be, within a certain guidelines and stuff like that. Do you actually see any difference? I mean, because I think that B2B marketing, you still market to people. It's still kind of, it's the another level of, at the end of the day, it's still B2C, because you're talking to individuals, you're talking to the CEOs or decision makers of another business, and they are still human, and they are people you're talking to, right? Do you see any specifics or any big difference between B2B and B2C marketing?
No, I think that's a really hard question to ask. So I want to put a kind of a clarifier in there. There are differences. There are differences, meaningful differences. I am not sure. Most of the best things that we do are things that I've seen work on me as a consumer from a B2C company, and then I've figured out how to make that work in a B2B model. Running Instagram story ads to deliver content or to show a video, not to have someone sign up for a demo, works. But B2B companies, the only major difference in the difference between B2B and B2C is that B2C companies are typically marketing led. They sell products that don't require, in a lot of cases, a sales force, unless you look at like auto dealers and some high consumer purchase. But like, most products are sold with marketing, whether through a retailer or direct to consumer, without a sales team. The only other difference is that B2B companies have been traditionally sales driven.
Yeah.
So therefore they invest more heavily in sales. They if they do marketing, in most cases they measure their marketing like they would measure a sales development team on leads and activities that don't actually matter, that don't actually map to the end result usually, or at least not in the best way possible. And so marketers in B2B, and I have a lot of empathy for this because I've lived in it, struggle to actually do effective things because they work in management structures that think like salespeople, not like marketers. And so, like, my number one advice, a lot of people say this, some people push back on me, some people appreciate it, whatever your opinion is, it doesn't, anyone doesn't matter. It's like, if you are in B2B, right, maybe not right now, but if I said this 3 months ago, if you work in a B2B company right now and your CEO does not believe in marketing, or you report to a salesperson, you report to the VP of sales, not a marketing leader, it's time to move on.
Yeah, it's
your career is not,
yeah.
Your career is not going anywhere as a marketer. If you're in that situation, you will continue. You might move up in that company, not as fast as you could if you work somewhere else. Especially if you're younger, the first 10 years of your career is about building skills and learning and working with smart people and actually starting to like find your own, you first learn and then find your own way to do things. And if you are in a company that doesn't give you the flexibility to start doing things your own way, which you never will be if your CEO doesn't believe in marketing, doesn't invest in it, or you report to a salesperson that's going to drive you to do the same bullshit stuff, then it's time to move on. Or it's time to just take a deep look in the mirror and say, by making, I might need to work here for whatever reason. I have student loans, I this, blah, blah, blah. I might need to stay here for a little while longer. But look yourself in the mirror and know that you're slowing down your career by doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's kind of, especially in the tech sphere, many tech companies, for them, marketing is always kind of, at the end of the story. Sales, or even, they when they start up, they focus on building the tech, building the product, etc. And when it's already late and it's already kind of a month or 2 months before the launch, then they remember that, oh, maybe we should hire someone to do marketing for the go-to-market strategy, for example. While you lose so much time of that whole period when this whole thing was being built, like about a year.
And we could have done so much, right? We could go on to do a whole nother podcast in this area, but if you hire a marketing leader 1 month before launch, you've already set them up to fail.
Yeah, absolutely. You wouldn't
ICP,
even want to take it up.
Positioning, right? Messaging, all the things that people don't think about, all the people that think are not important are the most important. We only work with companies that have a well-defined ICP, have product market fit, have traction, the metrics and have a good retention rate. All the metrics and signals show that they've done the strategic work up front. Because if not, if you inject marketing into a place where they don't have a focused ICP, you don't know how to target, you don't know how to message, you don't know who you're selling to, you don't understand them, you're going to fail.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, and fail might be an extreme word, but you're going to limit your upside. You're going to you slow down your growth by not doing those things and not having a marketing person that understands how important those pieces are and is involved with them. And so I think a lot of companies don't even think about that. They just think, okay, we'll get the product, we'll hire a sales team, we'll sell it to whoever we can. And then, maybe when we get to 10 million ARR, we'll think about who we're actually going to sell to. Maybe we'll hire market. And what they don't realize is that a lot of them never get to 10 million ARR because of those choices.
Yeah.
So over the past 10 years, there have been a lot of companies that should not be in business right now that have raised enough money to stay in business and will go out of business over the next 12 months.
Yeah.
That will happen. And so this is a time, for many, and this is tough to say, but for many, it's probably too late. You're burning $12 million a year on $4 million in revenue, and you have 6 months of cash left and you need to go raise money. You're going to really struggle. I think a lot of people will have trouble with that. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It's tough times, but as we said, it's the time to adapt and adjust and revisit and be more creative in terms of the way you look at things. So, if we have to wrap up, like, at this period, what's the advice that you're giving people about their businesses? Like, what should they pay attention to when they are reevaluating the whole situation and their business model and their marketing? What should they look at?
Yeah, I've been advising people on a few core steps. So, and they're in no particular order here. The first one is operational efficiency, and so and for us, luckily, because we've been smart about how we've built the business, like there's no headcount cuts for us, but we are getting rid of unnecessary software tools, any other variable expenses that don't matter. Operational efficiency would be the number one thing that I do. I do first. The next thing that I would do, and that I've done myself, is you need to reevaluate how you're operating as a human, and then have each person in your company reevaluate that themselves. So like I'm working 6 days a week to adjust to this. I'll probably end working more hours, and for better or worse, that right now I'm probably going to work more and get less, but it's better than working the same and going out of business. And so I think people need to look at that. The third thing is, with those extra hours and whatever your team is doing to adjust to that, a laser focus on your existing customer base.
Yes.
Number one. So how can you create more value than what they're paying, even more value than what they're paying you for? How can you get them to have more success? How can you tie either your product, service, whatever you're doing, to a number that actually matters for their business, revenue or cost savings, efficiency, that's worth way more from an ROI standpoint? How can you get to that level where they say, hey, we're not sure if this is worth it. We're paying you $15,000 a month, and like this, and then you can clearly go back to them and say, well, look, you paid us $15,000 a month. We spent $50,000 in ads, so it's $65,000 a month that you just paid right now, but we generated $200,000 in ARR, which then, if you look at it from a valuation standpoint, let's just pretend you're going to go on exit for 5x valuation. Then we just added $1 million valuation to your business in 1 month for $65,000 in investment. And it becomes very justifiable. Most people aren't able to have that level of business conversation. So figure out how. The next place would be on product. So companies right now, especially product-based companies, this is a really good time to go deep into figuring out how to differentiate and add more value inside of your product. More resources, more sprints, bring in whatever you want to do. My guess is that you're not going to be selling as much. So whether that's diverting resources or whatever you need to do, figure out how to get them more into product. And the last one, which I think, depending on the type of business, could be the most important, is focus on brand and content. So a lot of companies haven't even gotten to here yet. They've been direct response, performance marketing focused forever. And it's gonna be tough for them to start to make this transition. Their performance marketing is going to work way less right now than it did 60 days ago. And if they actually look at their spend, which they're going to be forced to by management, the CFO, the CEO, to say, okay, we spent $50,000 a month on Google AdWords and LinkedIn ads last month, and we got 1,000 leads and 0 deals. We just threw $50,000 in the trash to waste our sales team's time. Then they're going to have to get forced to figure out how to do something else.
Yeah. For some, PPC won't even work because they are completely irrelevant services for the moment, right? Like, tourism related stuff and, some other areas, which no matter how you market and no matter how many PPC ads you're going to run, it's not going to sell anyway. And everyone knows that in advance for the upcoming few months. They just,
So put all those different pieces together and then figure out how to reverse engineer all the different things about the people that you're trying to sell to eventually need right now, really need, not 15 tips to work from home, what they really need, and then give it to them consistently and frequently, so that when we come out of this in 3, 6, 9, 24, whatever length of time is, that when they need to buy something that you do, that they buy you.
Yeah.
and I think that's the way that I always think about things. I'm not trying to get a sale tomorrow. I'm trying to get a sale when it's right for the person that's trying to buy,
Yeah.
and helping them create awareness. So when they do recognize that, they decide to use me and not someone else or a different method to generate revenue for their business. That's how I always think. It's in my experience, very little how most startup founders would think.
Yeah. I think
Um,
it's the best time to build relationships. It's people have more time, they can pay more attention, they spend more time on social media, and relationships is what they will remember in terms of how much value you delivered, how you made them feel, whether you were around or not. So I guess that's the best time spent at the moment, with especially with the existing clients, to make them feel special. So yeah, I totally agree with
those are
you.
the 5 core buckets that I would focus on, and it's, I mean, kind of interesting, but none of them were sales.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's about maintaining, and through the brand impact and through the organic channels that happen, like, you will get sales. It's just not. I think that it's going to be really tough, probably ROI negative, to continue to focus there. We'll see how this all plays out. It's a little too early to tell right now how this is going to go, but it could end up going that way. Like, it the negative impact on brand perception, if I received 5 cold calls today, would not be worth the potential of making one sale.
I agree. Yeah,
So
totally.
yeah, that's how I'm thinking about it.
Okay, well, thank you so much for dedicating the time for the podcast. I mean, I think podcasts are the best way to create relationships, the fastest way. So I totally love this opportunity to meet new people and talk to them. So thanks a lot for coming. Stay safe, stay home, and hopefully we'll get out of all this much stronger.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and awesome to meet you.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.